Hello, folks. Welcome to the Manly Pinterest Tips Show. I'm Jeff C., and you're not. I've got a great show for you today. I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for everyone who's come in the crowd. Jackie, Dawn, thanks so much. You guys always show up and are always great guests. Thank you for coming and being a part of the audience. I'd love for you guys to head over to the website, manlypinteresttips.com, and subscribe to the new Manly Pinterest Tips Toolbox. You can see the go-to tools that I use to create graphics and boost my productivity. Just go to manlypinteresttips.com/tacklebox. And I'm very excited today to share my guest with you. Erik Fisher is the community manager for Social Media Examiner and host of the award-winning podcast, Beyond the To-Do List. He is also an authority on social media, productivity, and podcasting. Now, full disclosure, Erik and I are in a podcast mastermind together, which honestly has changed the way that I do business. We were able to hang out together at Podcast Movement a couple of weeks ago, and it's been great. So, Erik, thanks so much, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. It's my thrill and pleasure and all of the other nice words I can think of.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So as I'm talking to Erik, if you guys have anybody in our live audience has any questions, make sure to ask them and on the event page, and we'll try to get to them during the show, bring them up on screen, and Erik and I will try to answer them to the best of our ability. So let's just get right into the questions. Erik, kind of tell me a little bit about your backstory, how you got involved actually in social media.
Wow. Yeah. I was coming up and just at first I was interested in, you know what? I used to have a blog. I used to have a blog called Erik Writes, and I would just write stuff. And man, that was back in 03, 04. And you know, that was way back before Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And,
right.
And it was cool. And it was like, man, how do I get people to know it exists and point them to it? Man, I don't want to say I was ahead of my time because it was a struggle. I don't even know how I ever got people to know about it. I don't even know what we were using to like connect online at that point, other than like
MySpace.
Well, I never had MySpace. I skipped all that. I just saw it as something that, a friend of mine would have, he'd be like, hey, check out this band. He'd be like, go to myspace.com/blah, band name. And that's all I knew about social media for a long time. And as I was connected online through podcasting and podcasting communities, that's when I started hearing about things like Facebook and Twitter and all the other stuff that, has continually piled on. And even right to this very day, new tools that everybody's like, oh, we got a Periscope. And that's how it's been for like 10 plus years. So as time went on, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to learn how to use these tools to promote and connect with my podcasting audience, and did that, and eventually created. I got so good at it that I created. They created a position for me at my old job at a university, and they needed somebody to do social media, and so I stepped into that and did that for 3 years, and was decent at it. And I don't do that any longer. About a year and a half plus now, I've been working with Social Media Examiner as community manager.
Wow. So community manager, what does that mean? I mean, that's a very broad.
It is.
Title. What is a community?
Yeah, there are a couple of those titles that are out there. One is social media manager, which is what my old title was. And then when at Social Media Examiner, I became community manager. Yeah, community manager is a very, I don't know, it's like that could mean so many things. I think ultimately what it means is, and what it actually is I am one of the main core people on the social team, and we're there not just to post content, find third-party content to post, but also to interact and be basically a mingler with the community, and build it as we are humans in a digital world interacting. So that's the way I see it.
Wow. Well, so it's almost like the title. Remember in Seinfeld, the assistant to the traveling secretary? It's kind of one of those.
That was and what was the other one in The Office? Assistant. Was it assistant regional manager? No, assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah, exactly. So so it's a very, very broad title. Now, we just got back from Podcast Movement not very long ago, and a lot of people I talk to who are successful in podcasting, and they've told me that it's changed their business. I know it's changed my business. So when you got started in podcasting, how has that your Beyond the To-Do List podcast, how has it changed your business? Because I'm sure it has.
Yeah. I would say that, and this even goes for, again, like I said, I created, and they created at my old workplace, a position for me as a social media manager. And I got that by doing my show I used to do called Social Media Serenity with Cliff Ravenscraft.
Right.
I went to him. We were already, friends and everything. And I just said, hey, I got an idea. I want to do a podcast about social media. And he said, sure. And we almost made it only about Twitter. I'm so glad we didn't do that, because that would have been hard to have filled, an hour a week doing. But we did that for a year and a half plus. And that just gave me that incentive, that reason to become knowledgeable, to interact in the space, to really have my hand on the pulse of what was coming out. And in fact, I was part of a panel at Blog World in summer of 2012. It was me, Leslie Samuel, and Ray Ortega, and it was how our podcast got us to our dream job. And at the time, that was a dream job. Maybe not as much anymore, but because I enjoy doing what I'm doing now so much more.
Right.
But that was interesting. And then Beyond the To-Do List, that has really been a connector in a lot of ways, because of the nature of the way that, the way that podcast, like we're doing right now, it's almost as if there's no audience here. Right. You and I are sitting having virtual coffee and networking, and everybody else is listening in. And so you and I, we're building our relationship in public, and that's kind of what is happening. And so that is how I got to know Michael Stelzner. And so that really is the pathway to us being, connected, and me being where I'm at right now is podcasting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that made a huge difference for me, because now I am actually part of the inside, which started because I had a podcast. Michael had me on the show. We talked about it, and then I end up being able to run the Pinterest account for Social Media Examiner, which is just awesome. It's a dream, So yeah, so podcasting, for all you young kids out there listening, it can change your life.
Yes.
Well, I just finished listening to one of your episodes, and I told you about this in the green room. It was the one with Cliff Ravenscraft, the most recent one, where he's talking about his health changes and all that stuff. And I know a lot of people who are wanting to start podcasting, or they're just getting started. So how do you, and you've got great guests. I mean, you've got like Cliff, Donald Miller, Chris Brogan, David Allen. I mean, some really, heavy names in the industry. So how do you get people like that to agree to come on your show?
Yeah, there was a lot less people back in the day who were looking for people. I mean, my show actually started before John Lee Dumas by about 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that. And then there was a wave of other people that came after that. The interview podcast, existed prior to me starting, and then him starting, and everybody else following along after. So there was a lot less people asking. I got a lot of those people during that time, though. How you do it is honestly you got to be human. I knew that I had the opportunity. Let me put it this way. When I was trying to figure out how to launch Beyond the To-Do List, again, it was at Blog World in 2012 in New York City, and I had already interacted with Michael Hyatt a few times online, and he knew of me from me being on a different podcast, being a social media correspondent for Podcast Answer Man, Cliff Ravenscraft's show. And so he, and I think actually that's how Michael Stelzner and Dan Miller both heard of me before too. They heard my voice. I knew what I was talking about. So I had credibility going in and consistently practicing in public. So the key piece was that then I knew Michael was going to be there at Blog World. So, went up to him, shook his hand. We met in person. There was somebody else there. And this is where I started paying attention. She said, hey, and he said, hey, and don't we have an interview scheduled? in a couple weeks, don't we? And she was like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I was like, wait a second, she got an interview with him. I can get an interview with him.
Right.
And suddenly it opened my mind that, well, if I can point to that I've had Michael on it,
Right.
then I can get other people. And that started the snowball there at Blog World, where I wrote down 52 people that I wanted and thought I could get if I got some of these initial people. And I did. I mean, I had Cliff on right away and Michael Hyatt and so then, and you mentioned David Allen. You'd think he'd be really hard to get.
Right.
But I emailed thinking, okay, I want to eventually have him. Let's start the dialogue.
Right.
His wife emails back the next day within 24 hours and says, sure, he'd love to do it. How about this day and time? And I'm like, yes. And immediately accepted. So people are a lot more approachable, but you have to not approach them trying to kind of leverage them and leverage their, appearance on your show as a benefit for the show. You got to be human. And honestly, that's the way I approach it. I hope that most of the time that's the way it comes across is I just really find you interesting and I want to talk to you and I want to learn from you and others can listen in.
See, I think that's the key. I think that's being human and not being spammy. I mean, because that's kind of my story too. Because once you have one of those guests, I'm sure other guests check to see who's on your show, and it makes a difference. And so my big get at the beginning was I was friends with Peg, and she helped me book a guy Kawasaki on the show, which everyone on the internet follows him. Most
the internet follows him.
That's right. And so that. But I didn't do it in a spammy way. I said, I did not want to, have anything with the relationship with Peg and I wasn't trying to use that. I said, hey, do you think it's possible? And, what can I do to have it? It was very natural. It wasn't, hey, be on my show. You can do, it was, and I think that's something a lot of people make the mistake on when they first try it. So,
yeah. And that, I think that's people, you just got to be careful. You got to approach it. How would you, if you're a busy person, how would you like to be approached that would make you say yes? And then really reverse engineer that to ask somebody.
Right. Exactly. Good points. All right. Well, the title of today's show is Organizing Your Social. And I know since you're the community manager for Social Media Examiner, can you kind of give us a bird's eye overview of how that organization is organized? Because I know it's not just you, barking at commands. There's a whole team and all that kind of stuff. Can you kind of give us a bird's eye view?
Yeah, I am one person on a social team, and that's just one component because there's also an events team and there's also the editorial team because it is an online magazine,
right?
First and foremost, and the editorial team does an amazing job. They're the ones that are wrangling / writing all these different articles and writers and curating and looking forward. I mean, they're far enough ahead of schedule that they know what they're doing. Event team is operating on a whole other looking into the future kind of thing. And then social, we really are kind of a support in terms of marketing and interaction and customer service. And, so we're kind of intermixed. So I think that's the three major components. I may be completely missing something. And
I think is there the society is another section too, right?
Yeah, the society, I think, I think that may be fourth part at this point. Okay. I'm not 100% sure if that's how we classify it or not, but I know that it's a big enough piece. It may be under events. It may be under whatever. I don't totally understand that, actually. Never thought to ask. I just thought, hey, this is cool. I'm spending a lot of time in here. So
the other thing is Mike is above all that. So he's like,
exactly.
So
there's Mike and three others that are part of the executive team. So
exactly. So, well, one of the things you hear all the time, and there's blog post after blog post and the stuff on Pinterest all the time is editorial calendar, how to create an editorial calendar. Here's a template for an editorial calendar. So how important would you say an editorial calendar is?
Well, I think it's very important. I mean, if you don't have a plan in place as to what you're creating to share, as well as what your timetable is to share it and where you're sharing it, I mean, that's kind of where the intermixing of editorial and social, as far as that goes, that's where it is. That's where the connection and the interaction happens there. So.
Yeah, when I first got started, it was pretty. My editorial calendar was when I get stuff done, I'll post it. That was it. So I guess it's what you would encourage people to do is even when they're first starting out, they're just getting to be blogging or podcasting or whatever, is to come up with an editorial calendar, right?
Oh yeah, and I look at it less as a calendar so much as a timeline, and I try to look at it far enough in advance. I know I mean, again, I know the editorial team is literally working at least a month, if not a month and a half, and in some cases probably 2 months ahead on some things. Because I mean, there's what, 8, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, something like that, 8 or 9 pieces of content, articles coming out per week, not to mention a podcast. So,
Right.
which is more Mike than anybody, but he still has a great support team under him that's working on that after he's finished recording it and even done a piece with me or two that's part of it. So
Yeah, I didn't mention that in the bio, but if you guys listen to the social media marketing podcast, you are one of the guys who comes in with the discovery of the week, which I think that's the first place I heard you at. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
So you were talking about scheduling. So how far do they schedule their posts? I mean, for the Social Media Examiner schedule stuff out. I mean, I know the editorial team and the event teams is working almost all year round, but how far, like for posts, let's say for a specific network like Pinterest or Facebook, how far ahead does that piece of content get done?
As far as it's a complete piece inside the blogging system, I'm actually not entirely sure. I know that they are, again, I know that they are far ahead of where they need to be.
Right.
And that's great. And then they, like all good people, they're proofing and finalizing and, tweaking right up to the last minute a little bit, and, and artwork and all of that. And so I don't ever see, I am working as a social team component to their content coming in about a week and a half in advance to properly schedule and post and position those pieces on social and the other social team members as well. I have to believe they're probably 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
With finalization of articles. And again, that could be not the case with every article. Sometimes it's probably like, hey, something major just changed with this. We need to make an update before this article comes out. And it's true. There's so much changing all the time. So
right. And that's the other thing is there's a lot of experimenting, and I've noticed that since I've been inside is there's a lot of testing. There's a lot of new things that go out. It's not static. You don't go, okay, we're setting this for the year and this is our Facebook strategy, because it constantly is changing.
Right.
I mean, Facebook's always moving stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Facebook's a hard nut to crack. We're actually looking at that again right now. So
yeah, they're always changing.
Yeah.
So and Mike talked and Phil talked about this on last week's podcast, but I thought it was just fascinating. And I think there was even a session on it on the last week's, not last year's conference, but how Social Media Examiner picks people, what the criteria is that they have. So when you're looking for, because they, Social Media Examiner just doesn't share their own stuff, they share third-party content. What criteria are you looking at before you share something else?
Yeah, and ironically enough, I just did a session on this and third-party content curation strategy.
Right.
In the social media, this is a lot of mouthful of words. Social
society.
Yeah, well, the society, but in the society, the summary word. And the criteria for us, and this is something I had to learn, right away, and even kind of tweak a bit and get in a rhythm with it, and hone that filter of looking at third-party content is, let's see, there's a certain standard of quality. First and foremost, I look to see if it's a good piece of content, if it's really teaching you, if it's really maybe bringing a new spin or a new tips or tricks or perspective on how to do something, that fits for us. Again, it's got to fit our brand, so it is going to fit being generally it's going to be how to or breaking news.
Right.
We want you to know the latest and know the latest on how to do stuff. And I look for visuals. I always look for that's right up your alley. I look for visuals because I want to look at it through the eyes of a consumer first, so that if it comes through the newsfeed, it's eye-catching visually, the image as well as the headline, and then when you click through, that you feel like it was a worthwhile click through. that even if it's not something you need to learn, it's something that, oh, maybe I'll need that later, and you shuttle it off to where it's ready for you at some point when you do need it.
Or you share it with somebody else, or you share it to your audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's one of the things, I did this even before I started working for Social Media Examiner. Is the first thing I do is I check the date, because a lot of pins on Pinterest are old. And if I don't check the date, it may look great and it may have, kind of good information. But if I don't see the date, I scroll down to see where the last blog comment was. And that tells me where if it's relevant information, because I don't want to mess up my audience. They're following me for a reason, for good information. And I think that's exactly the same thing. Social Media Examiner has a high standard. People are always looking at them for the cream of the crop kind of stuff.
Yeah, I try to be very discerning, and that is the rule. Is if we don't find stuff, then we don't share stuff. We don't just share stuff to share stuff. We share stuff because it's worth sharing first off. So
right, good point. Now this is a good one too. How do you delegate work at Social Media Examiner? Is every task on a timetable? I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it. So how do you delegate down? So you're the community manager and you have other things you're in charge of. So what are some of your tips or tricks on delegation?
Honestly, a lot of it is self-delegation. If you know that only you can do something, then you've got to make that time and carve that time out for it at the best time possible. For example, and I can give you an example of this. There is a certain way of posting on LinkedIn that only can be done manually. You can't schedule it. And it's the one that we have found through experimentation that brings you the most click-throughs on what you post there on your business page. And so I have to do that. And I do that. I actually literally do that first thing in the morning when I first get up.
Right.
It's one of those things where I get up and I do that, and that's on me. And it's in that, I do 20 minutes of, I jump up, I do this after I've had coffee or something. Right. And, then after that, I can start to look at other things. But it's one of those things where I can't hand that off to somebody else. I can't delegate that to somebody else. That is mine. Right. And now here's the thing. If I did wake up and I was like deathly ill and I was just puking or something, right, I could pull my phone out and I could tell somebody, hey, can you get this for me?
Right.
And they would be able to do it, and they know how to do it. But that's the thing, is we're all set with our stuff that we know how to do. And I think that's the strength of the team, is that, for example, you're doing our Pinterest now. Right. So we've picked the right person to step into that role. And so we all kind of lean into our strengths, and we're all kind of covering the networks we either like the most or have, can cover the easiest. Right. We're leaning into our strengths, in other words. So,
well, that brings up another point, the importance of communication across teams. And so that's the thing I found, that I can get a hold of people that I need to, and I know that doesn't happen in every company, but I feel like here that it's pretty, the communication happens. It may not be instantaneous, but it really does happen pretty quickly. And there's tools and stuff that we'll talk about in a little bit that used to kind of foster that.
Yeah, definitely. And that, and everybody, we're all working to improve that always. I think that's one of the things that, there's, and we'll get into tools, but
right.
When you as long as you're not relying solely on email, which can be just cumbersome to communication.
Right.
In fact, I have a show coming out about that soon. I think communication is that key piece. And as long as you all are on the same page as to what the Beth, that's my wife's name. So I'm thinking about her. See, honey, I'm thinking about you while doing a show. I'm going to point her back to this watch. Yeah. As long as you're focusing in on the best ways of communication, and you all have that kind of common, hey, this is kind of, don't go 24 hours without responding to somebody's email. Right. That's an unwritten rule. I don't even know if that is a rule. And in fact, I would never go more than 24 hours. I'd actually never go a full 24 hours. I'd be like, every 3 hours or more. So,
well, and the other thing I've seen, that every task there's no open-ended tasks. Every task has a timetable. Mm-hmm. Even if you go past it, there's still a okay, what's the update on this? There's no just do this. Come up with a strategy, but you come up with a strategy by this date.
Right. Yeah, because if you don't attach a deadline, again, a deadline is not like it's not the end of the world, but
Right.
it's a point to hit, and it's a fire under you if you haven't done anything yet.
Right. Exactly. So we kind of mentioned tools before. What are some tools that you use to help manage Social Media Examiner's community?
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Probably the tool that I really like when it comes to let's go with Twitter first, is I use Tweetbot for Mac and for my iPhone. Key piece that I like about it is that it can use iCloud syncing, so that in the mentions tab, it will go right back to the last one that I was looking at, whether it was desktop. So I can be on desktop, scroll, looking. Okay, that's just somebody sharing. That's there's a certain formula is probably not word, criteria, to where I will go and I will thank somebody or interact with them or answer a question. That's primarily what I'm looking for first, is questions. But all that to say, it syncs, and that's great because I can pick up my phone and I can go and be right where I left off in that mentions bar without having to scroll back and trying to figure out, wait, where was it? Was that hour the hour one where I left off? I don't remember. And like, it takes care of that. And that's magical for me. So as far as Twitter goes, that's what we use. Facebook, we use Agora Pulse.
Okay.
That is the tool that we use. It sends me an email in my and that's the way I prefer it. It sends me an email every time somebody comments or posts to our Facebook wall. And it does that, there's never an hour where I don't get a new email from it. But what's cool is I can then click into that email and I can see exactly where it is. I can see exactly which post, or I can see somebody's, spammed our Facebook wall again. So I'll go delete that and ban them and be done with it.
How fast do you usually try to, like on Twitter and Facebook, respond to comments?
That can be, it fluctuates. It's not a set schedule. I try to make sure I'm checking in every 1 to 2 hours. And by that point, it's just a quick skim over to see what's new. Gotcha. Sometimes if I'm working on a project or an experiment and really trying to, when you can't change your focus to something and then come back again and have it be that your full attention is back on the project.
Right.
That's where it gets tricky, but yeah.
Gotcha. So do you use any and I know the answer to this too, but to communicate between the teams, I mean, is there a special tool you guys use for that?
Yeah, we've been using Trello. I can't remember when we started. It was after Social Media Marketing World, pretty soon after. So probably April, I think. And Trello is this thing with a whole bunch of different boards on it.
Right.
And different cards on the boards. If you had a cardboard, not a cardboard board, but what's the cork board?
Yeah.
If you had a big cork board on the wall, you had a bunch of, pinned, what are the index cards?
Yeah.
All with different things on it. It's like that, only digital version, and you move them along, or you can assign and you can chat and you can.
Yeah.
Anyway, honestly, I've heard of it for forever as a productivity guy. Still to this day, I find it a little bit overwhelming and all over the place, but I'm committed to learning it. And in fact, there's a ton of free training videos on how to do it in the on their site. So
yeah, I was when I first went into the Trello thing, just for the Pinterest thing, I was like, oh my. Yeah. And then there's tons. It's just not in just my area. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. However, the key cool piece about it is that it is like Gmail. You don't have to go pick thing by thing. You can go search and it'll bring up the right stuff, and you can filter. So
gotcha. Are there any tricks you use for like your email or Gmail? Because frankly, my inbox is out of control and everyone's like inbox 0, and I'm like, not me. Is there any?
Well, an inbox 0 isn't inbox 0, but inbox 0 really is not having no emails. It's about having, 0% of your attention in there when you're not in there. So, and I'm literally opening up my inbox right now to say that I have 5 emails in there currently.
Well, that's way better than me. Add like 1,000 to that, and we'll be all right. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I probably have more than 5, but I have a category over to the left that says it's called society. And I have a rule set up so that every time somebody mentions me or starts a new conversation or replies to one in the social media marketing society, I get an email, but they all go over there, and then I can jump right there and I can go through all of them at once and jump right in. And so, filters, rules, different things like that. And honestly, even just setting aside time to go in there and go through everything that's in the inbox, and honestly, even mark some stuff as spam when you get it and it's not something you should be getting for various reasons.
Do you use the default ones like, inbox, social, promotions, update?
No, I turned all those off when they first introduced it. That was useless to me. I would rather have everything come in and really, finally curate and tune what I even receive.
Gotcha. That's a good point. Well, we've got some questions from the audience that had sent me in earlier. There's some of them are pretty good. This one's from Elisa, and she says, "How do you organize your social media if you hate spreadsheets?"
Yeah, I don't hate them, but I guess you're asking what should you do?
Yeah.
I would say get somebody to work with you.
Right.
Or, figure out a way to love spreadsheets or tolerate them, or you find someone who does, and then you trade off, you social bartering.
That's right. Exactly. Well, you could also maybe use Trello, because Trello is not really a spreadsheet, and you might be able to organize some stuff that way.
It really depends on if you're using the spreadsheet for literal math formulas, then yeah, you got to find somebody to do that for you, or you got to figure out how to love it. But if you're using it as an organizational tool to keep things, blocked out in a table,
right?
I would say do it in PowerPoint instead.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. So, and she asked another question too. It's like, how do you organize your social media when you have multiple people are managing? And I know this person, where she's coming from, she's got a big team. There's like a manager over here, and a manager over here, and the stuff's cross-pollinating. So how do you organize your social media when you've got all these cooks in the kitchen?
Well, again, I think that's when it comes down to having the editorial calendar, having a schedule as far as what your current strategy is for each and every individual social account, as far as when if the content or the stuff you're creating is filtering down into the point where it's ready to be plucked from the hopper and put into the actual rotation to be, scheduled or manually posted. I don't know how everyone does it. We do a lot of scheduling, but some of them we have to manually post. So, but yeah, it's if you've got multiple people up the chain, well, then you start from where you are, or wherever it is, it feels like there's the most friction, and you got to sit there and analyze, why is there friction? Is it there's different people don't understand what other people's roles are? Is there different expectations for what something's function is? Is there, are certain people just not seeing eye to eye, not in a negative way, but in they don't know that this person already covers that, or this person is already doing this, or this person, this person can do that and didn't know that it wasn't, all the misunderstandings are really miscommunications and non-communications first and foremost. So yeah, I think analyzing and then communicating, start there.
I think communication is one of the biggest things. And a lot of people, at least, a lot of people are non-confrontational. And so that's not a fun thing to do.
Well, it doesn't need to be confrontation. It needs to be investigative, and even, hey, this seems to not be working. How, what's your perspective? Ask for their opinion first. Don't tell them what they're doing wrong.
Gotcha. That's good advice. Here's a good one. How do you organize social media around certain campaigns while still doing regularly scheduled stuff? Now, I think a good example of that is, Social Media Examiner's got the summit coming. And then also right after that, they've got the next conference going. So those are things that are going to happen, and those are campaigns that are coming up. But you've also got just the daily magazine kind of pushing stuff out. So how do you organize stuff for that?
We have that standard schedule for, in other words, we would post lighter in a non-promotional season. Unfortunately, we have not had that much of that lately because we were promoting Social Media Marketing World, moved right into the Social Media Marketing Society. And then we had a little bit of a break, and then we moved into the summit, which we're promoting from now until it happens in October, which you and I are both speaking at.
Right.
And like you said, then when the summit ends, we go right into promoting Social Media Marketing World again for next year in April. And so, yeah, that can be difficult. But the thing is that we have those slots. So in other words, we've got predetermined slots. And again, this is kind of the marketing slash the marketing and the social team and the events team all corroborating on, again, we've got this static chunk of stuff that's coming from editorial and is never going to stop. So those get a set time and a set, posting and all the networks and everything like that. Right. And then the promotional stuff gets strategically put in after the fact. Because first and foremost, we have to continue to create great content and continue to publish it.
Right.
Then we market the stuff that we want people to know about aside from that. So, again, you got to have your priorities set in terms of what has to go first and then what can be shaken in after. So,
well, and I think it's important too that it's not just, okay, this is going, and then all of a sudden there's stuff that happens even when other stuff's going on, it's backed up. So it just doesn't hit when, okay, this is over, and then the next thing starts. It's backed up, so it's not stacked on top of each other. So
right, yeah. So for example, we're not promoting Social Media Marketing World for next year right now. We're not at all. We're not promoting it. You can buy tickets to it. We're not promoting it. You can get a great deal. I'm not trying. I'm trying not to do over promotional stuff, but it's like I feel like I have to because I feel like I'm leaving something out. But anyway. So we're not promoting that right now at all, but we will turn on that promotion engine. And a lot of it's being worked on behind the scenes right now up through to the end of the summit. And then that's when we can turn that on. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly, it's stuff that's been worked on behind the scenes. I think that's a good way to put it. Here's a good one. How do you balance curation with sending out your own content? So is there a formula that we're going to put X amount of our own stuff versus third-party content? How do you kind of balance that out?
Yeah, that's one that's been tricky. I think that for a while there, we had maybe certain ratios. I think ultimately so for example, on Facebook, we figured out that we could pull off putting out our own evergreen content out there and get a lot more traffic to our site through Facebook, which was great. We figured out that breakthrough for us, and then suddenly it was like, oh, well, we can post more, because see, the key piece about Facebook is that if you post something, and people complain about this, if you post something, not everyone sees it. Well, that just means you can post more, and not everyone's going to see every single post, so you can post more. So that's what we decided to do. We post our new stuff first thing in the morning. We have most of the afternoon and into the evening, where that's kind of where the breaking news / third-party content stuff fits. And we have certain, every few hour slots that we just fill. Again, if we have quality content, third-party content, or breaking news. And then the evergreen stuff is in the evening. So that's how that works. As far as a ratio or something, I'll look to see if somebody's third-party content did just amazing, then I'm going to keep that, I'm going to pin that, not literally on Pinterest, but I'm going to put a pin in that, and I'm going to hold it. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to use this one again because it did really well on this network. And so we'll do it at a different day and a different time and see if we can get other people to see it as well. So.
Well, that, you said not pinning on Pinterest, but what I do is I actually monitor the tweets and also the Facebook stuff and see what's doing well and looks like a good article. And if they have a good image, then I'll put that to the Social Media Examiner account, because that stuff's working. It's going to work on that as well. So yeah, so there's some cross promotion stuff that goes in there. Here's an interesting question I wanted to get, because she was really she really wanted this answer. She goes, how do you set aside time to take a hard look at what is working and then what needs to change. But she goes, it's really hard to do. Does he have a procedure for that? Because I'll steal it. Because she's struggling with, looking at, I guess, analytics and trying to figure out what's working and then what needs to change, as well as continuing to put out content and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So many
hours today. In fact, that we're kind of in that right now. And the way I'm looking at it as, okay, how can I batch process and sit and, just grind it out in terms of the stuff that I know I can schedule or delegate to somebody and ask them, hey, can you take this over? I need to look at this. Or who can I also bring in on that analytical side of things? Don't just feel like again, I get it. Some people are stuck. You're a one-person team and that stinks, right. But maybe you can get somebody else to help you that's, without breaking any rules or whatever. Right. But see if you can't have a team of people. That's one of the things we're lucky with is we have that team, and I have access. And again, I'm not always the point person, but sometimes can be in terms of looking at something and saying something here is not working, or we're seeing lower traffic. Depending upon goals, one of ours is traffic. We're seeing less traffic from this certain network. Is there something we've done differently? Excuse me. If we've not done anything differently, is there something we can now experiment with and do and try differently to see if we can, better optimize something there. So again, I would say try to not do it alone. But if you are stuck doing it alone, then I would say you're going to have to carve out that time to really look at it with full focus. So that means you're going to have to maybe work a night or two,
right,
and or more. I don't know. Depends on your schedule, and really, focus and or again, if you can offload something of your own to somebody else just for a temporary fix so that you can work on it, or again, rope them in to help you. So,
right. Well, I think also, and look at it this way, is carving out that time, being able to go and analyze stuff and see what maybe you can let go of and, streamline some things. Mm-hmm. Will save you time in the long run. So, think of it as a way that, okay, by carving out this time now and spending a little extra time, it will save me X amount of hours during the year or something.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
So, well, here's the last couple of questions before we end our show. You are the productivity tools guy. I mean, that's your thing. So are there any new tools that you've tried recently and are excited about?
Well, the one key one for me has always been trying to figure. It can be tedious. You're supposed to tweet. Twitter's my thing, I think, for the most part. Everybody says you got to tweet with images because you get so much more visibility and engagement and all that kind of stuff. And I won't go into numbers or anything, but right. It's common. Tweets with images grab me, and I stop and look at them more. Problem is that half the time, you got to find the image, you got to upload the image, you got to, all that. I use something called TwitShot, and I've been telling everybody about this. It's been a game changer for me. In particular, TwitShot.com. There's also an iOS app, but what it does is you take the URL, and it can even take like shortened URLs or URLs with UTM tracking and all that kind of stuff. Take that URL, you go to that site, or you install the bookmarklet stuff on Chrome and Safari and whatever else, and it will scrape that site and look for all the images and give you options, and you can choose one. Kind of like with Pinterest, where
right,
some sites it's like, hey, which image do you want to pin?
Right.
So it's like that, but for Twitter, and then you've already got it set up and ready to go. Plus, the cool piece is then you can you can schedule or tweet to. You can send that tweet with the image to like Buffer or something. So you've got it. Cool. You can use it with your scheduling tool of choice. So the iOS app is really cool too, because then I can hit, I got to get an official. I said this the other day. What's that square with the arrow that points out of it on? That's like the sharing button. Oh, yeah. It's got to have an official. Anyway, the Apple sharing button.
Yeah.
And because it's on OS X too. You click it, and TwitShot is an option on the iPhone if you have it installed. So then suddenly it again is taking that article, finding, and it does it all mobile and it does it on its own, and you don't have to again, go down, find the image, download the image, upload the image, then just it does it quickly. So
that's huge. And I did not know that, because I'm a Buffer fan. Especially for my tweets and stuff, I'll hit one button and get them all scheduled and all that stuff. But I didn't know I could do that because I put, for all my posts, I put images, but I did not. That's a huge game changer. So
yeah, TwitShot is amazing, and it's a huge time saver. And sometimes it finds a better image than the one that they actually have sitting there on their article. And for the most part, that's the other key piece, is then you're not looking for some stock image to use in your tweet. You're using theirs. You just don't have to go dig for it on the site. Again, download it, upload it, put it in, and then.
Is it free?
It is free. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
And the app as well is free. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to install that and get it working. So, last question, where can we find out about you and your services and your podcast?
Yes. Well, I am over at beyondthetodolist.com, and you can find all my other social network links there.
Very cool. Thanks, Erik, so much for being on the show. And as always, I'd love for you guys to go over to manlypinteresttips.com, click on the sidebar bar, and join our email community where you'll never miss a great guest like we had with Erik here today. Because at manlypinteresttips.com, we are always adding testosterone 1 pin at a time. See you next time, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye now.